Welcome to My Pod's podcast. I'm Dr. Joe Schneider, and after 35 years as a functional neurologist, a personal journey through stroke recovery, and helping thousands of patients, I'm here to share breakthrough solutions for POTS and neurological wellness. From getting out of bed in the morning to rebuilding your nervous system, this is your guide to understanding and overcoming neurological challenges. Let's begin this journey to recovery together. I'm going to say happy pollen day.
Rough one out there.
Rough one out there. It's going to be very warm today. So we picked the topic, autophagy and sleep.
Something people do not get enough of.
Both. Not enough autophagy and not enough sleep. So my story about autophagy was that my friend Dr. Mike Guardaria, he's in New York, and he invited me up to his center after I had my stroke. And I did 2 weeks there, and Mike would say to me, autophagy, Joe, autophagy. And at first I didn't know what he was talking about, but I guess I was neurologically stupid at the time because I had a stroke. And, I really wanted to get better. But on my MRI, I had a big scab in my brain because I had a hemorrhage. My scab was in my left basal ganglion and in my thalamus. Thalamus is a sensory integration area to your brain, and your basal ganglion is for movement. So by stroke, I had Parkinson's disease because I damaged my basal ganglion, and Parkinson's is really about neurological damage to your basal ganglion that happens over years. So have you had any experience with autophagy?
Muscle repair.
Muscle repair?
Going through, being sick. I mean, I've never had any kind of terrible health ailments, but, coming out of being sick, you need that rest and reset. And that's where that autophagy kind of kicks in.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say autophagy is kind of like a detox to the brain. Would you think that's a good definition to start with?
Yes.
All right. And so we have autophagy as a cleanup mechanism for the brain, but we also have cleanup mechanisms for the body. We call that detoxing. And detoxing has always been popular over the years, which we upregulate the detoxification mechanisms in the liver to kind of like get rid of the toxins that have built up over time in your tissues and the liver itself. And also kidney. Kidney is a good detoxer. Skin is a good detoxer, right? So if we want to go into that, right? So detoxification is a natural mechanism every day that we do in our body.
Yes.
So autophagy is a natural mechanism combined with sleep that helps to clean up the brain after a day of damage or a day of normal functioning in an environment that's not always pleasing to our body and our brain. Yeah, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Right. Now, you had a concussion after you started working.
I did.
Right, okay. So a concussion, when you have a bruise to the brain, then you need to clean out the damage that happened, like the bruise. So if you have bruise on your skin, it gets red, it gets puffy, and so forth. And basically, you have to clean that bad red blood cells, the scab under your skin, so that you start having normal tissue again, and you lose the color, the bruise. Well, in the brain, when you damage neurons and you damage interconnections or axons, the wires in the brain, then you need to clean up the damaged stuff and get it out, okay? So in the body, we have large white blood cells called macrophages that they do clean up after there's damage in your tissues. And then in your brain, those macrophages are called microglia. And microglia are very mobile within the brain, that they're always moving, looking for things that need to be cleaned up. Things that may not be working as well as they should, you need to get rid of them because they just take energy away from you that needs to be put in other places so that you have better activity. So I would say the major cleanup for the brain is called microglia, which are similar to macrophages in the body. And then the other glial cell, which are supportive cells in the brain, like microglia is a glial cell, is astrocytes. And astrocytes are important in maintaining the synapse from one nerve, or the signals that go from one nerve to the next. And that space is called a synapse. And so the research about the astrocyte is that they are donators. They donate mitochondria, which I think is like one of the most fabulous things that came out of research on glial cells, is that astrocytes help out other nerves by giving it microglia. Microglia is your powerhouse for your nerve to get it to function better.
The mitochondria.
Mitochondria,
Mhm.
yeah. So I'm mixing up microglia.
Too many M's.
Too many M. So mitochondria are really, really important for the energetics of the brain. But anytime you have activity, cellular activity, you need the power, the battery.
And that's what the mitochondria is for.
Yeah. So it comes back to, it's like, why do we sleep? So sleep is really, really important for the maintenance of the brain itself, or autophagy. And as we know from our patient feedback and just from patients and people in general, is that sleep has become very problematic. We're just not getting restful sleep. And so most of our patients either have trouble getting to sleep, and then once they get to sleep, they wake up a lot throughout the night, and then they wake up in the morning and they are exhausted. So when that happens, when we're not sleeping well, then we know that the maintenance aspects are not really working well in the brain. Now, another thing about the brain that we are becoming very knowledgeable about, and that's the default network. And the default network really is a network of activity. When we do a QEEG, we look at the activity of the brain. It is a network of activity in which we are resolving things emotionally, mentally, in the brain. So the default network becomes more active when you're sleeping than it does when you're awake. So your brain goes into an activity level in which you kind of resolve your emotions, resolve difficulties, resolve problems, resolve things that you may be worried about. So, we can come to the conclusion that if you're not sleeping, then we're not maintaining the cellular integrity of the brain and its activity, and it becomes toxic. And then the other thing is that the default network isn't really operating so that you can start to resolve a lot of these emotional traumas that you have, or the worrying, the stress, that mental activity that can cause you anxiety and depression and so forth. So it's many faceted, right?
Very.
Multi. So what would be a good sleep for you?
A good sleep? I'm lucky if I get 7 hours. To me, 7 is good. I think within my age class and my activity level, I think that 7 to 8 range is ideal, much like many others. But, I get 6 hours of sleep and I do feel the difference between that additional hour the next day.
The next day, yeah.
And if I get 8, I feel the additional difference between that too.
Yeah.
More alert.
Well, many patients struggle when they wake up in the morning. They struggle with stiffness, with pain, and just really getting their head together, get rid of brain fog and so forth and so on, right? The mornings can be very, very difficult for our patients especially. Or they can wake up with some energy, and then within an hour or two that they've lost it. So some of the ways that we kind of like measure it, like we do QEEGs and we look for brain inflammation. We look at mitochondrial function with our Q, especially the brain core Q that we do. And with the brain master, we look at connectivity issues. Now, a lot of the research on microglia after a brain trauma is that microglia can change after a severe injury. And instead of having a lot of movement throughout the brain, they stay in one spot. They don't move. There's not a lot of movement. Functionally, they're either very pro-inflammatory or they're anti-inflammatory. So they call that an M1 or M2 microglia that have been either ramified by injury or neuroinflammation. So they can get to a point in which they really don't have a lot of great function to them, where they're not supporting you. It's not like the microglia will be very mobile. They start losing their mobility, and then when they lose their mobility, they actually lose a lot of their beneficial functions for brain. And they can be very reactive at that point to environmental stimuli, like the change in temperature or the change in barometric pressure, or people may have difficulty flying, where you go up on a flight and then you come down and then you're just exhausted. Even though you may have slept during your flight, you're just exhausted at that point. So it can be a very complicated subject, but we know the basics is that when you set yourself up for a good night's sleep, and that would be don't eat 2.5 hours before you're going to go to sleep, right? Don't go to bed on an empty stomach. Have less alcohol. Don't
Sugars,
drink, right?
decrease sugars.
Yeah, reduce your sugars. So you need to prepare for sleep. Now, there's a lot of consensus about what time you should go to bed, right? And so I think over time it was like the signal to go to sleep was when it gets dark.
Yeah, based on, circadian rhythm.
Yeah,
That's what,
that's what it's all about. And then the time to wake up is when
right?
it's bright. So when the sun goes up and the sun goes down. I mean, that's really kind of like your circadian rhythm, your sleep cycle. So make sure that when you go to sleep, it's dark, like no light,
Yeah,
because light is stimulatory,
right.
right? Okay. And then in the morning, it's good to get up with light. But if you don't get up with light, then you can use synthetic light or light panels and things like that. Help people that have seasonal affective disorder because you don't get as much light during the day as you do in the summer. So I know I do personally. I always feel better during summer. And so when I get out of bed in the morning, I get up around 5 o'clock and there's not light. So I turn all the lights and I just make sure that it's a well lit environment before the sun actually comes up. So light and darkness are very, very important for your body to kind of get in the mode for sleep. So people that stay up late, like midnight, 1 in the morning, and then they're trying to get into a good rhythm, is against the rhythm of the earth and the light cycle. And it doesn't really serve them very, very well. People that are on shift work, where they may be on the night shift, have a lot of difficulty and a lot of health problems because of it. And that's really kind of difficult to get over. Even though they may rotate out of a night shift into a regular shift, their body just doesn't get acclimated to what's happening. So we talked about this space station, and we were talking about the space station, and that when they went up in the space station, astronauts, they are not in a gravity situation. Their environment's changed, but also their light darkness system has changed. So they need to come in and start to get that rhythm going. So you want to deactivate your normal daily rhythm. And so eating is part of that. So eating is like, why do we eat?
Supply nutrients to the brain.
Supply nutrients to the brain and the body for us to work. So when I was studying physics, the definition of work was the force times the distance, right? So what type of force times the distance are you doing at night?
Forcing yourself to sleep.
You're just trying to get a good night's sleep, right? So you kind of need to kind of shut down the daily rhythm. It could be eating rhythm, it could be studying rhythm, it could be all your rhythms that would be a normal process through your day need to be shut down and slowed down. So you need a time in which you start to get yourself to sleep. So shut off television, shut off computers, and so forth. And then you put yourself, your bedroom should be an environment in which you don't have a television, right? And that it's an environment where you can make it very dark and very quiet so that sleep becomes something that becomes a habit, a habit form in your body, which it's a natural rhythm. Now, when you go into sleep, you start to go into deep sleep, the four phases of sleep in the beginning, right? It takes you about an hour to start getting really into a deep sleep. But then towards the morning hours, what starts to happen, you start to rotate into what's called REM, right? Rapid eye movement. So you start getting more activity around your default network towards the early morning hours, and then you end up starting to just end up getting up. You're not going to go into a deep sleep anymore. And that's what really happens with the brain. Now, brain maintenance is really important on a daily basis, but brain maintenance or improving brain maintenance is important for an injury. Because if you can't clean up an injury, then the injury is kind of an anchor or a weight in your brain, in brain function.
And not only, is sleep so beneficial for the cleanup and removal of like the wastes and the damaged tissues or damaged neurons, but it's also such a strengthening system where it helps us to be able to plasticize naturally.
Yeah, exactly. So what portion of the plasticity are you talking about?
Like neuronal connections, forming connections between neurons.
Correct. And some of the most important connections would be through there are rhythms between the day and night, which is also regulated through cortisol, right? That we'll actually feel better. We'll feel better physically because we've been recharged at night, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And then throughout the day, we're able to perform at a better level. So in physics, the definition of work is the force times the distance, right? So performance is about work or force times the distance, right? More so, performance is about power, right? How much power do you have as a person is the work divided by the time.
Yeah.
If you look at the work that you can do throughout the day divided by the time you put in, then, if your body can produce enough power to get you through the day, then it becomes a really good day. So one of our patients who just really kind of graduated from the program, he had a brain trauma. He fell through a floor about 25 feet onto his back, and he had a physical trauma and a brain trauma. And then he had a hard time even working because of his attention. And then, he had a family, he couldn't work. And this is a beautiful story because the people that he worked for actually helped him throughout this entire process. So by doing our program, he had some POTS, he had some issues with memory, focus, attention, working on a computer, and so forth. And he could put maybe 2 or 3 hours of work in. So how much time do you think he's working now?
10-hour days.
10-hour days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, did you talk to him?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lost weight, got really good energy, great attitude. And the biggest gift is that he's there for his family. So when he gets finished work and he gets home, he has enough time for his kids and his wife.
And he's smiling.
And he smiles.
Completely different affect.
Yeah, completely different affect. So that's the gift. So he sleeps well, he gets up, and then he has the power to do his job, and also the power when he comes home to really complete his day by being with his family and doing the necessary things for them mentally, emotionally, and physically that needs to be done as a father and a husband. That's probably one of the biggest victories that we've had in the office for a while, right? Now, if we talk about getting over dysautonomia, which is very complex, there's many systems that are involved with it, right? Brain, body, nervous system, peripheral nervous system. He required not segmented care, but comprehensive care. Like really,
Yeah.
So he had gotten some of the therapies that we do in the office in other places. And a lot of times we get a question from a client or patient that will say, what is the most important thing for me to do? I'll just do that.
Or can I just do this one?
And we're finding like, no way, right? Because, we're here, our responsibility is to have a life impact. Life impact is just not symptom impact, but it's to get your body to a point in which you can have enough power to get you through your day and get you through your week. Now, there are cases in which we get patients that can do their work and then they hit their weekend and they say, I'm just so, I don't have enough time for my family or friends or socializing or doing anything or going to church. And that's no life either. So the thrust of all the care that happens at the Hope Brain Body Recovery Center is to fully get their life back, whether it's just work, it's being able to take care of yourself physically, and it's also to start to enjoy your life again. Hobbies, friends, family, relationships are all important in that life impact.
Exactly.
All right, so thank you very much. It's been a pleasure being on again, and have a great day. Enjoy. Thank you for joining us on My Pots podcast. If you're looking for more support, visit us at hopebraincenter.com or follow our journey on TikTok, where we share daily insights and inspiration. Remember, healing is possible. I'm living proof. I'm Dr. Joseph Schneider, and I'll see you next time as we continue exploring paths to recovery.